The road stretched endlessly before us, a single ribbon of asphalt winding through the vast, empty desert. It had been my idea to take this trip, a weekend getaway to explore the abandoned ghost town of Black Rock, hidden deep in the desolate valleys of the Southwest. The promise of untouched photography opportunities, eerie yet beautiful landscapes, and a break from a mundane had been enough to convince Rachel to join me. At least that's what I thought. But as I glanced over at her, her fingers absently scrolling through her phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't as present as she used to be. While you're here, leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to know. You sure this is what you want to do for our anniversary? I asked, try to inject some warmth into my voice. Thought you prefer a spa weekend or something more lively. Rachel smirked without looking up. You mean something that doesn't involve broken down buildings and you obsessing over shadows and angles for hours? I forced a chuckle. Something like that. She finally met my eyes, her expression unreadable. It's fine, Eric. You've been talking about this place for years. Might as well see what the hype is about. Might as well. That wasn't exactly the response I was hoping for. The silence stretched between us, interrupted only by the occasional hum of the tires against the cracked pavement. We had been together for almost 6 years, married for 3, and yet, lately, there was an undeniable distance creeping in. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but it was there. I noticed it in the way she answered me, with half-hearted nods, in the way her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes anymore, in the way she stayed up late on her phone, texting someone she always claimed was just a coworker. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to believe that I was imagining things. I gripped the wheel tighter as the first decayed structures of Black Rock came into view. Wooden buildings, long abandoned, stood like forgotten ghosts against the fading sun. The remnants of a town that had once thrived, now left to be reclaimed by time and dust. Rachel stretched her arms as she stepped out of the car. This is it. I thought it'd be bigger. It was once, I said, pulling my camera strap over my shoulder. A gold rush town. People thought this place would make them rich. Then the mines dried up, and everyone disappeared. She exhaled sharply. Depressing. I ignored her tone, instead focusing on the light cascading through the splintered wood of the old saloon. This was what I had been waiting for. The untouched beauty of decay. The quiet stillness of a forgotten world. I adjusted my lens, already losing myself in the art of capturing history. Hey, travelers! The unexpected voice pulled me from my concentration. I turned to see a man approaching from the ruins of what had once been a stagecoach station. He looked like he belonged to the desert. Tan skin, shaggy, sun-bleached hair, and an effortless confidence in the way he moved. Didn't think I'd see anyone else out here today. I nodded. Just here for some photography. Rachel, on the other hand, seemed immediately intrigued. And you are? Blake, he said with an easy grin. Been coming here for years. There are some hidden spots most people don't know about. Rachel's interest peaked. Oh, like what? I adjusted my camera settings, tried to ignore the way she had suddenly become engaged in the conversation. Blake gestured toward the far end of the ghost town, where a crumbling hotel stood alone. That place still has rooms intact. They say it's haunted. Rachel gasped in mock horror. Okay, now I have to see it. I sighed. We should stick to the main areas. Safer that way. She rolled her eyes. Eric, we're not breaking in. It's an abandoned hotel, not a bank vault. She turned back to Blake. Show me. He grinned. Follow me. I hesitated. A tightness settled in my stomach. There was something about Blake, something about Rachel's sudden enthusiasm. But I let it go. Go ahead, I said, forcing a smile. I'll catch up. Rachel barely glanced back before she disappeared with Blake into the ruins. I turned my attention back to my camera, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted, something I couldn't quite name. Yet, I spent the first hour wandering the empty streets of Black Rock, adjusting my camera settings and capturing the eerie beauty of decay. The old saloon, its sign still hanging on by rusted nails, groaned against the wind. The general store, shelves long emptied of supplies, sat in shadows, its doorway yawning open like a black hole. Every step kicked up a layer of dust, unsettled by time, disturbed only by the occasional whisper of the desert wind. The kind of place where echoes carried secrets. The kind of place where things disappeared. Rachel hadn't come back yet. I checked my watch. 40 minutes had passed since she had left with Blake, maybe more. I had figured she'd get bored after a quick look inside the hotel and wander back to find me, but she was nowhere in sight. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. I shouldn't be annoyed. If she was enjoying herself, what did it matter? Still, something gnawed at me. I glanced toward the far end of town where the abandoned hotel loomed, its once grand entrance now sagging under the weight of age. It had probably been a luxurious escape once, back when gold miners struck it rich and wanted to spend their winnings on something other than dust and exhaustion. Now it was nothing but a shell of its former self, a husk with broken windows and empty halls. I debated walking over, but decided against it. Rachel would come back when she was ready. Instead, I let my lens guide me, crouching to get the perfect shot of the church steeple in the distance. The sky was turning golden, the sun beginning its slow descent. A perfect time for photography. I lifted the camera to my eye. That's when I saw them. Through the fractured glass of the hotel's upper window, two figures moved inside. Rachel, Blake. I lowered the camera, pulse kicking up a notch. They were just exploring, right? There was no reason to think otherwise. But something about the way Rachel had followed him, the way she had barely looked back, it lingered in my mind, nagging at the back of my thoughts like an itch I couldn't scratch. I tried to shake it off. I kept taking pictures, shifting focus to different buildings, but my gaze kept flicking back to the hotel. Another 10 minutes passed, then 15. The golden hour light burned against the cracked facades of Black Rock, but my attention wasn't on the scenery anymore. I finally gave in. My boots crunched against the dry ground as I made my way toward the hotel, my steps slow and measured. The entrance was barely hanging on its hinges, a faded Black Rock hotel, plaque barely legible under layers of time. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of old wood and dust. Rachel? My voice echoed through the empty hall. No response. I stepped deeper inside, past the rotting front desk and the grand staircase, now covered in debris. The silence felt heavy, suffocating in a way that had nothing to do with the ghost town's history. I followed the faint sound of movement, careful with my steps. The second floor had rooms still standing, doors barely holding onto their frames. Then I heard something, a soft laugh. My chest tightened. I followed the sound, walking slower now, ears straining to catch every whisper of movement. My hands clenched at my sides, jaw tight. There was no logical reason for the unease creeping over me. No hard evidence. Nothing except instinct screaming that something was wrong. Then I saw it. A single set of fresh footprints in the thick layer of dust, leading down the hall. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. I could turn around now. Walk away. Pretend I didn't see anything. But I didn't. I moved forward, slow and silent. The footprints led to a door at the end of the hall. The wood warped and splintered. I reached for the handle, but before I could push it open, a muffled voice spoke from the other side. Think he suspects anything? Rachel's voice, quiet, uncertain. Blake chuckled. Nah, he's busy with his camera. You worry too much. My stomach dropped. I took a step back, swallowing the anger rising in my throat. I shouldn't be hearing this. I didn't want to hear this. My breathing was slow, controlled, though my hands had curled into fists at my sides. I could confront them now. I could kick the door open, demand an explanation. Instead, I turned and walked away. This wasn't the place for it. Not yet. I made my way back outside, my head buzzing, my body tense with the weight of realization. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the empty streets of Black Rock. I needed proof. I needed a plan. Rachel and Blake would come out soon, laughing, maybe brushing off whatever had happened inside that room. She'd return to my side, act as if nothing had changed. But I had changed. I knew the truth now, and I wasn't going to let it slide. The drive back from Black Rock was eerily silent. Rachel sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, completely at ease. Occasionally, she'd glance up and make a comment about the scenery, as if the trip had been nothing more than a fun little getaway. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. She didn't know that I knew. I had spent the last few hours playing along, pretending nothing had changed. I even smiled when she suggested we stop at a roadside diner before heading home. Starving, she had said, stretching in the passenger seat as if she hadn't spent part of the day locked away in a dusty old room with another man. I agreed, forcing an easygoing tone, knowing full well that the longer I kept up the act, the more careless she would become. At the diner, I watched her over the rim of my coffee mug as she flipped through her photos from the trip. "Look at this one," she said, sliding her phone toward me. A perfect shot of the setting sun over the ruins of Black Rock. The light caught her hair just right, making her look innocent. I glanced down at it, nodding. "Nice shot." She took a sip of her iced tea, completely oblivious. "I think I might print some of these." The ghost town was incredible, wasn't it? I smiled. "Yeah, unforgettable." Rachel's lips curved, satisfied. She had no idea that every word that left her mouth only confirmed what I already knew. The way she carried herself, unbothered, relaxed, image she thought she had gotten away with it. For now, back at home, I went through my usual routine, waiting for the right moment. Rachel disappeared into the bedroom, saying she was exhausted from the long drive. That worked in my favor. I waited until I heard the familiar sound of the shower running before heading to our shared closet. I wasn't sure what I was looking for at first. Maybe some small slip-up, something out of place. A receipt, a note, anything. My fingers brushed over her suitcase, still sitting by the door. I unzipped it and carefully sifted through her clothes. Then at the very bottom, tucked beneath her folded sweaters, I found something that didn't belong. A small, neatly wrapped gift box. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. The weight of it was solid. I peeled back the corner of the wrapping, revealing an expensive-looking watch inside. It wasn't mine. A slow exhale left my lips as I stared at it. This wasn't a simple souvenir from our trip. This wasn't meant for me. I heard the water shut off. Quickly, I slid the box back into place, closing the suitcase and stepping away as if nothing had happened. My heartbeat drummed in my ears as I moved toward the kitchen, forcing my expression back into something neutral. When Rachel emerged from the bedroom, towel wrapped around her, she gave me a lazy smile. "You coming to bed?" "Yeah," I said, glancing at my watch. "In a bit." She didn't press. She just yawned and disappeared down the hall. I waited until I was sure she was asleep before I went back to her suitcase. This time, I wasn't just going to look at the watch. I was going to make sure whoever it was meant for never got it. Pulling out the small screwdriver from my desk, I worked quickly, prying open the back of the watch. Inside, the delicate gears gleamed under the dim light. With precise, careful movements, I loosened a few tiny screws, just enough to ensure that within a few days, the watch would stop working entirely. A parting gift. I resealed the watch, making sure it looked untouched before slipping it back into its wrapping. My hands were steady, my breathing slow. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was calculating. Tomorrow, I'd start watching more closely. Tomorrow, I'd let Rachel think she still had the upper hand. But by the end of this, she'd realize just how wrong she was. The next morning, Rachel was back to her usual self, casual, unbothered, moving through our home with the kind of ease that suggested she had no idea I was watching her more closely than ever. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, pretending to scroll through my phone. "You working late tonight?" she asked, grabbing a banana from the counter. I glanced up. "No, she'll be home by 6. "You?" She shrugged, not looking at me. "Might go out with Sarah for drinks. She's been begging for a girls' night." I nodded, setting my mug down. "Sounds fun. Where at?" Rachel paused, just for a second. "Not sure yet. Probably that new rooftop place downtown." Lies. I knew Rachel. She always planned nights out in advance. She'd have a reservation, an outfit picked out, an entire itinerary. But now, she was being vague. She wanted me to assume she was with Sarah, so I wouldn't question it when she disappeared for hours. "Cool," I said, forcing a small smile. "Tell her I said hi." Rachel returned the smile, kissed my cheek, and left for work. I watched her go, my mind already spinning. I needed to test her. At lunch, I texted Sarah. "Hey, hope you're doing well. Rachel mentioned you two are getting drinks tonight. Have fun." It only took 5 minutes for a response. "Drinks? Haha, I wish. I'm swamped with work all night." Rain check. There it was. Proof. Rachel wasn't meeting Sarah. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. So if she wasn't with Sarah, where was she going? And more importantly, with whom? That night, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I parked a few blocks away and waited. At exactly 7:45, I saw Rachel's car pull out of the driveway. I gave her a solid 5-minute head start before following. She drove across town, stopping at a small bistro on the edge of downtown. From my spot down the street, I watched as she got out, adjusting her dress, running a hand through her hair. A little too much effort for a simple dinner. I tensed when a man approached her. Tall, fit, well-dressed. I didn't recognize him, but the way Rachel greeted him, laughing, touching his arm, sent something sharp through my chest. I gripped the wheel, debating, storm in now and demand answers? Or wait? I waited. For over an hour, I sat in my car, watching through the window as Rachel and the mystery man ate, drank, smiled. I clenched my fists, reminding myself to breathe. Then, something changed. Rachel's posture shifted, rigid, awkward. The man leaned in, and she pulled back slightly, shaking her head. He frowned, clearly confused. That's when I realized she wasn't flirting. She was uncomfortable. Something wasn't right. I was halfway out of the car before I even thought about it. My heart pounded as I crossed the street, stepping through the restaurant's entrance. Rachel saw me instantly, her eyes widening. Joshua? The man looked between us, sensing something. Is this your husband? Rachel swallowed hard. Yes. He raised his hands. Relax, man. I just came here to talk to her about. I know what you're doing. I interrupted, my voice low. Rachel's face turned pale. The man frowned. Excuse me? You thought you could just meet her here and not get caught? The tension at the table was suffocating. Rachel shook her head. Joshua, no, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, I said, jaw tight. Because from where I'm standing, it looks bad. The man exhaled sharply, grabbing his coat. I don't need this drama. Good luck. He walked out, leaving Rachel staring at me, wide-eyed. Joshua, I swear it wasn't. Save it, I snapped. Let's go. Rachel hesitated before grabbing her purse and following me out. The drive home was silent, tension thick between us. I didn't speak. I didn't ask. I wanted her to sit in it, to wonder if I believed her. I knew one thing for sure. This man wasn't the one. I had been wrong. But that only meant Rachel was even better at lying than I thought. And I wasn't stopping now. The silence between Rachel and me had become a living thing, thick, oppressive, curling around the edges of every conversation we had. She had spent the last 2 days trying to smooth things over, laughing too brightly, kissing me more often, cooking my favorite meals. It was all a performance, but I let her play her part. I wanted to see how far she'd take it. Joshua, I think we should go out this weekend, she said that morning as she poured herself a cup of coffee. Just us. Dinner, maybe a movie. We haven't done that in a while. I glanced up from my laptop, pretending to consider it. Sure, sounds nice. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, but I didn't miss the way her fingers tapped anxiously against the ceramic mug. She was trying to distract me, redirect me, make me forget about the other night. But I wasn't forgetting. I needed more. That afternoon, while Rachel was at work, I went through her car. I wasn't proud of it, but pride wasn't my concern anymore. I checked the glove compartment, the center console. Nothing. Then I slid my hand under the driver's seat and felt something smooth and rectangular. I pulled it out. A hotel key card. My pulse quickened as I turned it over in my hand. No markings, just a generic plastic card, but it wasn't from anywhere we had stayed recently. So Rachel had been in a hotel. I stared at the key card, a slow burn creeping into my chest. This was it, the slip-up I needed. That evening, I didn't mention what I'd found. Instead, I watched, observed. Rachel seemed lighter than she had in days, like she thought the storm had passed. She curled up on the couch beside me, scrolling through her phone. Ich glänzt over. Who you texting? She looked up, smiling. Just Sarah. She's telling me about her nightmare of a day. Sarah. The same Sarah who, days ago, had no idea about a girl's night. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. That sucks. Tell her I said hi. Rachel hummed in response, already back to her phone. Lies on top of lies. I excused myself and went into the bedroom, pulling out my laptop. I searched for hotels in the city, cross-referencing key cards from different chains. It took an hour, but I finally found a match. One of those boutique hotels downtown, the kind that catered to business travelers and people looking for privacy. Privacy. I ran a hand over my face, inhaling sharply. I needed to see for myself. The next day, I left work early and went straight to the hotel. The lobby was sleek, dimly lit, the kind of place where no one asked too many questions. I approached the front desk, keeping my expression casual. "Hey, I think I left something in my room a few days ago." "I had one of these key cards," I said, sliding it onto the counter. "Would you mind checking the room number for me?" The receptionist glanced at the card before typing into her system. "Of course. Do you remember the exact date of your stay?" I smiled. "I think it was 3 nights ago. Sorry, it's been a blur." She nodded, clicking through the records. Then she hesitated. "Sir, I'm afraid I can't share room details due to our privacy policy." I leaned in slightly, lower my voice. "Totally understand. I just need to know if the room was still checked into that night. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time looking for something that's not there." She considered me for a moment before glancing around, making sure no one was listening. Then she nodded. "It was occupied that night. That was all I needed." I left the hotel, my mind spinning. Rachel had been here, which meant she had lied again. That night, I watched her more closely than ever. She laughed at my jokes, rubbed my shoulders, even suggested we take a weekend trip soon. She was trying too hard, overcompensating. I met her eyes across the table. "You ever stay in that boutique hotel downtown?" Rachel blinked, caught off guard. "What? No. Why?" I shrugged. "Heard good things about it. Was thinking we could book a night there." She hesitated, just for a second. "Oh, yeah, sure. That sounds nice." Lies. I leaned back, forcing a smile. "Good. Let's do it soon." Rachel nodded, but I saw the tension in her shoulders, the flicker of something behind her eyes. She knew. She knew I was getting too close. And I wasn't stopping now. I wasn't sleeping anymore. Every night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, running through every scenario in my head. Rachel was still lying, still covering her tracks, but she had no idea how close I was to unraveling everything. The hotel key card was just the beginning. I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. That morning, I woke up before Rachel and grabbed my coffee, sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my laptop. I had already checked our shared bank account, but Rachel had her own personal one. She had always been private about it, dismissing it as her fun money. But I knew better now. If she was paying for hotels or gifts, it would be there. I logged into our phone plan instead. I wasn't a tech expert, but I knew enough to check call logs and messages. As I scrolled through Rachel's records, one number appeared far too often, at odd hours too. Late nights, early mornings, times when I thought she was asleep next to me. I copied the number and ran a reverse lookup. The results loaded and my stomach clenched. Blake, a name I didn't recognize, but now I had something solid. Rachel walked in, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "You're up early." I forced a smile. "Just getting some work done." She kissed my cheek, then reached for her phone on the counter. I watched as she unlocked it, hesitated, then turned slightly so I couldn't see her screen. She was texting him, right in front of me. I took a slow sip of my coffee, forcing myself to stay calm. I could have grabbed her phone, demanded answers right then and there. But I wanted more than just a confession. I wanted to catch her. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice casual. "I was thinking we should go back to the ghost town this weekend. Maybe get some more photos. You seem to like it there." Her fingers paused over her phone. "Oh, this weekend. Yeah, unless you have other plans?" She hesitated, just for a second. No, that sounds great." Lies. I smiled. "Good. I'll make the arrangements." Rachel nodded, but she was already back to her phone, her fingers moving quickly. I had her. Later that day, I made my own preparations. I called in a favor from a friend who worked with security cameras and got access to the ghost town's local feed. Most people didn't know some of the buildings had motion-activated cameras installed for safety reasons. I had a feeling Rachel didn't know that, either. By the time the weekend rolled around, I was ready. We drove out early Saturday morning, Rachel acting normal, laughing at my jokes, playing the perfect wife. But her hands gripped her phone too tightly, her eyes flicking to it every few minutes. She was waiting for a message. We arrived at the ghost town just after noon, the desert heat baking the abandoned buildings in golden light. I'm going to set up my camera over by the saloon, I told her. You can wander if you want. She hesitated. Yeah, maybe I'll check out the old hotel again. I nodded. Go for it. She walked off, her pace just a little too quick, disappearing into the dusty streets. I let her go. Then I pulled out my phone, accessing the security feed. Minutes passed. Then movement in the hotel's doorway. Rachel and Blake. They spoke in hushed voices, glancing around before slipping inside. I exhaled slowly, my hands tightening around my phone. There it was. Proof. I took screenshots, saved the footage, then tucked my phone away. I could have stormed in, confronted them on the spot. But no, that wasn't my style. I had a better plan. Rachel thought she was playing me. She had no idea the game was already over. I waited. Not for long, but long enough. Long enough for them to think they were safe. Long enough for them to believe they were clever, sneaky, untouchable. I stayed outside the hotel ruins, my camera slung around my neck like I was just another photographer capturing the eerie beauty of the ghost town. But my eyes were locked on the entrance, my heart steady, my breathing controlled. I had already won, even if they didn't know it yet. When Rachel and Blake finally emerged, I didn't move. I didn't need to. Rachel adjusted her hair, her face flushed, and Blake had the look of a man who thought he had gotten away with something. They didn't see me. Not yet. They walked toward the back alleys of the town, the winding paths where most tourists never ventured. I let them go, giving them time to part ways, to cover their tracks. I had everything I needed, but I wanted more. I followed at a distance, my steps careful, my breathing measured. Rachel stopped near an old wooden bench and pulled out her phone. Blake leaned in, whispering something to her. She laughed, soft and secretive, before she typed a message. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Rachel, hey babe, taking some solo shots in the town. Might be a while. I stared at the words, at the way she weaved her lie so effortlessly, and I almost laughed. Almost. But I wasn't ready to give myself away. Not yet. Blake kissed her cheek and slipped away first, heading toward his own car parked at the edge of the town. Rachel lingered for a few minutes before finally turning back toward where I waited. She didn't notice me until I stepped into her path. Her eyes widened. Oh, Josh, you scared me. I smiled. I was just looking for you. She tucked her phone away, her fingers moving a little too fast. I was just wandering, taking some photos. Just getting lost in the atmosphere. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. Really? Find anything interesting? She hesitated. Not really. Just some cool old buildings. I nodded. It's funny. This place actually has security cameras in some of the buildings. They installed them last year after vandals wrecked part of the saloon. She frowned. Oh, I didn't know that. I held her gaze. Yeah, they pick up everything. Her smile faltered for just a second. That's good. Keeps the history safe. I watched her closely, waiting to see if she would crack. But she was too good at this. Too practiced. She had no idea I had already seen everything. Come on, I said, placing a hand on her back. Let's head home. She exhaled, relieved. Yeah, I am starving. She thought she was in the clear. She had no idea the storm was coming. I spent the next 2 days preparing. Not just gathering my evidence, but setting the stage. The local history exhibit was something Rachel had helped organize, a grand showcase of the photographs I'd taken during our trips. It was meant to celebrate the beauty of abandoned places, the quiet decay of forgotten towns. But this time, it would reveal something else, something she never expected. The community center was packed by the time we arrived. Rachel walked in beside me, smiling, greeting familiar faces, her confidence unshaken. She had no idea. She had no reason to suspect a thing. I stood near the entrance, watching her work the room, laughing with friends, oblivious to the fact that her world was about to collapse. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't falter. I was in control, and that was the key to everything. The curator stepped up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate the work of Joshua, whose breathtaking photography has captured the forgotten beauty of history. Now, let's begin the presentation. The lights dimmed. The projector flickered on. The first few slides were exactly what everyone expected. Haunting images of broken-down saloons, rusting vehicles, crumbling buildings swallowed by time. The crowd murmured in admiration, their eyes fixed on the screen. And then it happened. The next slide appeared. A grainy, black-and-white image. The ruins of an old hotel. Two figures, a woman and a man, silhouetted through the cracked glass of a window. Another slide. The same figures, closer now, their bodies pressed together in the dim morning light. The whispers in the room grew louder. Someone gasped. The images were not explicit, not vulgar, but they were damning. They told a story Rachel could not explain away. Rachel went rigid beside me. "Josh, what is this?" I turned to face her, my voice calm. "History, Rachel. Sometimes the past isn't as dead as we think." Her eyes darted around the room. People were staring, whispering, shaking their heads. Blake wasn't there to save her. She grabbed my arm. "You need to take that down. Right now." I tilted my head. "Why?" "You wanted everyone to appreciate my work." Her breath came fast and uneven. "This isn't funny. This is our life, Josh." I stepped away from her, my voice low but firm. "No, wretched. This was our life. But you buried it the second you thought you could lie to my face." She tried to speak, but I was already walking away. The images remained on the screen, frozen in time, just like the ghost town where her betrayal had been captured. And just like that, she was history. Rachel didn't leave the exhibit immediately. She stood there, frozen, as if hoping someone would defend her. But no one did. People avoided her gaze, whispering amongst themselves, shaking their heads in quiet judgment. I walked out of the community center into the cool night air, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. By the time I got home, Rachel was already there, pacing in the living room. "You humiliated me," she spat the moment I walked through the door. "In front of everyone." I didn't flinch. "You humiliated yourself." She threw her hands up. "It wasn't like that. You don't even know the full story." I set my keys down on the counter. "I know enough. And so does everyone else." She shook her head, desperate now. "Josh, we can fix this. We can go to therapy, talk things out." I almost laughed. "Therapy? After everything?" "Rachel, you don't get to rewrite this. You lied, you cheated, and you thought I'd never find out. Now you're only sorry because you got caught." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. You just didn't want me to know," I corrected. "There's a difference." For the first time, I saw it in her face, the realization that I was truly done, that there was no pleading her way out of this. I walked past her to the bedroom, grabbed a bag I had already packed, and slung it over my shoulder. Rachel's voice cracked. "Where are you going?" "Away from you," I said simply. She followed me to the door. "Josh, please. We have a life together. You can't just throw it away." I stopped, turned to her, and met her eyes with unwavering finality. "You threw it away first." Then I walked out, leaving her standing there in the house we once shared, the weight of her choices settling around her like a ghost she could never escape. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.